Hello and welcome to More Tea Minister. My name is Ian. Today we are going to produce two videos, simply because I'm looking at four teas that are all interrelated, but I don't want to make one massively long video. So I think it makes more sense to split it into two videos. What they have in common, as you'll be able to tell by the thumbnail for this video and the next one, is that they are part of our intermittent series Cultivars in Disguise, and in this case the cultivar in question is Chun, or Four Seasons, a tea that we've been very familiar with, especially in the form of Bao Zhong. Now what we're going to do today, as I say, is split up the four examples that we have of Chun. What we're going to look at in this video, the first video, part one, is Chun from either end of the year, 2025 in both cases. So from TaiwanTeaCrafts, we have a Baguashan Pre-QingMing 2025 Chun Bao Zhong. The Bao Zhong tells you that we're dealing with a very low degree of oxidation, but also that the leaves are going to be strip form and unrolled. Pre-QingMing means it's pre-spring, so it's March, it's pretty early in the year. That, of course, is one of the advantages of Chun. It's a prolific growth. It's called Four Seasons because you can get 4 harvests worth of the tea. You can get growth and therefore harvest at any time of the year, any harvest season of the year. In sharp contrast to that, we have Four Seasons Competition Oolong from Curious Tea. Now, in this case, the tea was harvested in November of 2025, last year, at the time of recording. And it was then processed, including a light baking, to ready it for competition grade for this particular tea competition. So what we're really looking at here, apart from that slight baking, is it's a question of seasonality. What does Chun provide for a Bao Zhong really early in the growing season, and what does it provide for a competition grade, gold grade oolong right at the other end of the year? I should point out that I'm saying oolong for the Curious Tea version rather than Bao Zhong, because I don't know what form the leaves are in. I'm going to guess from the size of this packaging and the fact that it's not really bulky in that direction, it's not deep, is that we're dealing with a rolled oolong here, as opposed to, as you can see, that's much broader, because the leaves, well, they take up a lot of room, and also if you vacuum pat them, you'd end up crushing them. So that's our first video. This could have come under the Tale of Two Seasons, but because there's another 2 videos to do to look at in a related video, we're going to put it all under Cultivars in Disguise, Chun, or Four Seasons, in 2 videos, and this is today's. So we're not going to take a look at the packaging because we've only got specialized, customized packaging, if you want, from Curious Tea. I will show you it up close so you get some sense of what we're looking at from Curious Tea, but TaiwanTeaCrafts packaging isn't specific. It's generic packaging, so it's not really fair, I think, to look at one up close and not the other. What we will do, however, is look at the tea inside both of these packets and also report on the scent, the aroma of both teas. And then we'll move on to a joint Western/Teapot brewing for these teas to compare them side by side, and then we will do 2 Gongfu sessions, 1 for each, and I think, to be chronological, we'll start with our Pre-QingMing 2025 Bao Zhong from TaiwanTeaCrafts, and then the winter harvest from Curious Tea. Let's make a start by looking at the tea leaves. See you in a mo. Here we are looking at the tea leaves. They're rolled. It's rolled oolong, the Four Seasons Competition Oolong from Curious Tea. The colour scheme, I would say, is pretty uniform. It's a pretty much forest green with some greener shading. I think some of that is very well dried stalk material, really, really well dried. Although possibly if it's competition grade, sometimes stalk material is removed altogether for that, in which case you may be looking at the edges of some leaves. The beads are a very uniform size, and their size, I would say, is about 3 millimeters, pretty uniformly. Again, that's perhaps not surprising for competition grade tea. The scent is sweet. There's an edge that tells me it's more kind of floral than fruity. And there's a bit of body. I'm not saying you can pick up any baked notes, but it's not simply freshness and floral or fruity, depending what the tea was. There's definitely a little extra something in there. So I'm looking forward to our Western style comparison of this tea along with the Bao Zhong, and then we'll move on to our Gongfus. So first thing we're going to do is take a look up close at the Bao Zhong. Back in a mo. Here we are looking at the Bao Zhong leaves from TaiwanTeaCrafts. You can tell immediately some distinctiveness about this tea compared to the competition grade. First of all, there are some great galumphing bits of stalk material, such as this big piece here. Now, granted, that's perhaps more obvious because this tea hasn't been salted for competition grade. It's machine harvested, but also the leaves aren't dried and then rolled. So there's a lot more visibility for stalk material than there would be in a rolled oolong. The colour scheme, perhaps because we're looking at rolled and stripped stripped and unrolled rather than a rolled oolong. There's a much broader kind of colour palette, ranging from very pale green in some instances, especially in some of the larger leaf particles, if not outright full-size leaves, right through to some kind of darker shading. So I'm not sure how well you can see. There's darker shading there, but much paler here and paler here. So the smell of these leaves is really, really encouraging. There is something, a very complicated sweetness there. And in fact, it's so sweet, it's almost kind of confectionery-esque, quite a complex sweetness there. And there's definitely something beyond that, something floral. So very much looking forward to the brewing of the tea, and let's move on to that. Welcome back to the next part of our video, where we're going to be reviewing our two teas side by side, brewed in a Western or Western or teapot style. So let's swap these round, because I'm left-handed. Perhaps that's what's making me think in these terms. This tea here is the spring or pre-spring, the Pre-QingMing 2025 Bao Zhong using CG Chun. And this is the competition oolong from winter 2025, very late in the year, from November. So that we can kind of get the best out of both teas, I'm going to move that one away from me so that I can only smell one of them at a time. What I should say is that I've treated them to the same parameters, the same brewing parameters. 3 grams of tea per 250 mils of water, 90 degrees centigrade for 3 minutes. So let's begin by taking a look at the colour for the Pre-QingMing. For the Pre-QingMing. I don't know how well you can see that. There seems to be a lot of glare on this today. If I hold it there, that's about right. You can see it's very pale yellow, perhaps. You can see that. But it is indeed a very, very pale yellow. The smell, there is something of the creaminess and something light and fresh, and yeah, there's a floral edge to that as well. So that's fairly typical for CG Chun. Now, this is a cup, and it is possible to drink from it, but for one thing, it's insulated. So it's going to keep the heat in very well, and I'm going to end up roasting myself. So what I'm going to do is take, as we've tried before, is pour some into this cup, and then we'll drink that. Okay, there we go. While that's cooling, perhaps I should also take a look at the colour of this tea in comparison. So if I hold them up side by side, you can maybe see that there isn't much difference. But there you go. If I tilt them that way, you can see that there's a bit more yellow in the winter version over here. But as I say, I'm not smelling that or tasting that one just yet. we're going to try the pre-spring. So this is as early as you can get. Actually, I say that I've seen for sale some Chun tea that has already been harvested, and we're only into February. So maybe this year's harvesting conditions are a little different, or it just depends where the tea comes from, but we're already into 2026 Chun production. So we're well ahead of the curve in some parts of Taiwan. So, Pre-QingMing 2025. On the cup, it's fresh and it's floral. Not so much that richness, that creaminess there. Loads of freshness. It's what people expect from Chun. It's not just fresh, there is definitely something floral. It could do with brewing maybe a bit more tea or a bit longer, but I suppose we should also account for the fact that Chun isn't about depth and body and richness and impact, at least in this format, no foreshadowing. It's about freshness and lightness and being refreshing. And there is something more than pure freshness dancing on the edge of the palate. There is something more complex. It's florality. It's sort of a floral aspect. It's sweet and it's floral and it's fresh. Something of the creaminess, but it came off much more on the scent. But there is something giving it just a touch of body. So that is the spring or pre-spring version. Let's take a look at this late winter version over here. Scent-wise, that one had some of the creaminess and sweetness and freshness and florals. What have we got here? Well, there's something a little deeper. Again, it's immensely sweet. It's a very complex sweetness. I was about to say it's sort of heading into ripe fruit, but it's possibly the baking, the degree of baking that's required to bring it up to competition standard. But it's complex and it's sweet. I think there is still some freshness there, which is pretty good for what we're looking at with baking and all of that. But there's still freshness and natural sweetness. It's what I'm getting off the cup. Lots of complex sweetness. And body, lots of body. Loads of body there. As to whether the roasting has brought anything specific to the table or whether it's accentuating, let's say, the sweetness, I'd be hard-pressed to say. I would have to have an unbaked one to be able to tell for certain. But what it's not doing is adding in any kind of roasted notes. That's not rich in the sense of cloying or over-facing. It's just added, there's loads of body to that. Lots of body, lots of complex sweetness. Some freshness. I wouldn't say there's anything specifically floral or fruity in the taste, but there is freshness. There is a certain lightness. It's got lots of body and it's very smooth, so the creaminess is there. It's coming across in that smoothness and that body. So there is a very definite difference. The spring is all about the freshness and the lightness and the sweetness and definite floral notes, whereas this winter version, especially with a degree of baking, its body, its richness, its complicated sweetness, some freshness, but the florality has dropped out. It's just got loads of body. It's really, really good. Very, very, very satisfying. So that's looking at our two teas Western style. The question is now, what will we gain, what will we garner in terms of knowledge and understanding by putting these two teas through a Gongfu session each. So let's move on to that part of our video. See you very soon. We're now moving on to review our tea, which is the Baguashan Bao Zhong Pre-QingMing 2025, which means it's very early in the year. I think it's March, if I remember correctly. And we're going to brew this in a Gongfu session. So what we have is 3 grams of tea for 50 mils of water for the steeping. The water's at 90 degrees centigrade. Because the leaves are unrolled strips rather than oolong beads, as I like to call them, we're looking with slightly lower steeping times. Not necessarily much lower, because it's not always the case that the rolled oolongs take a lot longer to unfurl, but you do have to kind of account for that. So everything's pre-warmed. Take another reminder of what the dry leaf is like. The creaminess is there, and the floral quality is there. Kind of buttery. It really is almost buttery on the nose. So let's take a look at maybe 25, maybe even 20, and see where that gets us. Let's make a start. 50 mils of water. Well, that's a good start. The leaves are all submerged to one extent or another. I think one quick shugel will do for that. There we go. That's good. Coming up for 20 seconds, let's see what scent we've got. Not much of anything. Okay. See what we get at 30. Yeah, there's something there. Let's take that to 35. Something fresh there. And something sweet and herbal. I'd be hard to press to pin it down more than that. The leaves, well, what was I saying? The leaves really are still pretty dry. So this is going to be, through no fault of the tea, a pretty thin showing. Although I say that, not a bad bit of colour. That's a yellowish white tea colour, if that makes any sense. That's silviness with some yellow. Scent. Something, it's sort of spring growth, if you see what I mean. So it's not vegetal in that dull sense. It's sort of vibrant. Yep, same on the cup. Bit of creaminess there. Yeah, the flavour is dropping off, but some of the creaminess has come through already. And as I say, a bit of zing, a bit of freshness. So we definitely need longer steeping times. And we might be prepared even to up the temperature, but let's just give that a proper steeping this time. Make sure, right, okay. Let's see where that takes us. So coming up on 20 seconds, and then we will start looking at 30, I think. No, we'll start looking at 25. Nope. This is not going to be my day. It's not going to be hurried. And why should it? Coming up for 35. Nope, not there either. It really is not. For cooperating. 45. Nope. Right, we're going to go with 50. Very vegetal. Very greenery. Very sort of spring greens. That's what I'm getting at. I really was expecting something. Oh, wow. overlaying that is a lot of freshness, a lot of spring. Wow, there's a load in there, almost sort of volatiles coming off. I'm sure they are, but that's a kind of sensation. Colour-wise, a bit more yellow, but sort of grading away from where it was before. Yep, a bit more sweetness on the cup, but essentially the same thing. Yes. Floral, vibrant, spring, green, fresh. Yeah. Still a little thin, but not by much. You could drink it at that level without feeling you'd been shortchanged. The leaves are still, some of these leaves are still, I suppose in truth, some of this material is still dry. So it's going to take an equally long steeping again. Let's reset that. Then we're going to go for the same duration. Now I think we're looking for 40 seconds again. Although that one did work pretty well. No complaints there. Right. The teas we've been looking at today, I obviously haven't overdone it. I don't mean just this video, but I've been doing a few different teas today, 5 in fact, across 3 videos, and I sometimes worry the amount of caffeine in them doing this, but not so far. I've obviously been keeping the drinking and that didn't sound right. I've been keeping the drinking under control. Sorry, that didn't sound right. If anybody clips that, I'm going to be in trouble. There we go again. It's spring greens. It's irony. It's what comes across. Sorry for the noise. Some of this material is still maybe a shorter, hotter steep as a 4th one. But the smell is pretty typical for partially soaked oolong leaves. Colour-wise, it hasn't really got any more intense than the last one. If anything, it seems to have dropped back down to that first steeping. That said, the freshness is all there, and it's sweet. Not sure I could tell you it was floral, but lots of freshness and sweetness. Same. Yeah, much the same. Complex sweetness, loads of freshness. Funnily enough, not much in the way of greenery, although there was on the jug. I am going to bump that temperature up and see where that takes us. Actually, with a slightly larger mouthful, there's definitely some floral qualities there. So that's hotter. Let's see what that can do for us, because this leaf material, some of this is not cooperating at all. See where that takes us this time. I don't like these videos to drag on. A commentator was kind enough to say that it doesn't really count as a long video as long as it's interesting, and I suppose as long as it's the length of the video is to do with having something to say, not just wittering or havering, as we say here. That's both are good words. Wittering is a good word, so is havering. 40. Right. Let's not push past 45, which is there. Without 5 degrees extra heat. Oh yes, there's a little more richness, a little more complexity. That kind of spring aspect is back. We approve. Yeah, the leaves are at least partially so. They've still got a kind of slightly leathery quality, but they are at least soaked this time. Colour-wise, same as it was before, a yellowy white tea colour. Lots of sweetness. Yeah, I'd say it's flowers. I'd say, I couldn't tell you what kind of flowers, but it's not a heavy-duty scent like a rose, but there's something floral to it. Very complex sweetness. Richness is coming through finally, and sweetness. A bit of greenness, and that floral quality. Okay, so let's just turn that off. This tea did not behave the way I expected it to. I've had Bao Zhongs that have been a lot more responsive. I don't know if it's to do with being pre-spring growth, but that really was not for soaking. Even unfurled, even though it's not rolled. And there's still a little thinness. I don't know what you would do to kind of extract more from it. Excuse me, whether you'd go for 100. But thinking purely in terms of what the tea gives, some of the richness towards the end, definitely something floral, plenty of complicated sweetness, loads of freshness, and nothing vegetal, but a kind of greenery. Yeah, there we go, a greenery kind of quality to it as well. So let's have a look at the other end of the spectrum of the year and see what the November tea has to give us as well. See you in a moment. Hello and welcome to the last part of our video where we are going to have a Gongfu session to review the Oolong, the Winter Oolong competition grade made from CG Chun, 4 seasons, this one being from Curious Tea. The brewing parameters are going to remain the same. 90 degrees centigrade for the water, 3 grams of tea per 50 mils of water per steeping. Now you may think, given how unresponsive the spring growth was, isn't this late winter growth going to be just as awkward? In reality though, when this went into the western steeping at 90, these little beads were unfurling pretty rapidly. So I'm hoping that even if we're having to push it to say 40 seconds, we're hopefully going to get some responsiveness from the leaf. So let's make a start. Everything I didn't mention before, everything is of course pre-warmed and ready to go. A reminder of the smell of the dry leaf. A bit of creaminess and sweetness. So we are going to take this to 30 at the very least and see where we go from there. Okay. Am I seeing much popping? Yep, some popping. That's always a good sign. As the beads are starting to unfurl to the best of their ability. So, coming up for that's past 20 seconds. We'll take a look at 30 and see where we are. Hopefully everything else is ready to go. Okay. Some movement with the beads, but they're not really unfurling. We're going to go for 45, okay? And we'll just see where 45 takes us. Okay, we're going to go with, nope, we're just going to go with a straight minute and see what that does. If that doesn't work, we'll go with 95, that'll show it. So here we are at a minute. Oh yes. Greenery and sweetness quite complex, so we're getting something out of it. The leaves are still pretty dry. You can see they haven't unfurled very much at all. Colour-wise, as it was before. Sort of a yellow, white tea colour. There you go. More on the nose, loads of sweetness. Lots of sweetness. Oh, and something creamy, definitely creamy, buttery there. Same on the cup. Ooh. The butteriness is really coming through, loads of that. And it's sweet. The flavour's dropping off slightly, but only slightly. We are going to go with 95. I feel I don't want to be sort of playing second fiddle here to a tea. So he's up to 95. And we're once again going to start looking at 30. Has that extra heat done anything to the popping? No, we're seeing some unfurling. Right, it needed 95. Which it didn't, Western style. Why? I don't know. But I suppose it had longer to brew, but it seemed to be out very quickly. Okay, coming up for 30. See what that tells us. Still popping. Take a look at 45. That creaminess and some of that greenery still lingering on the palate. That's a good sign. Coming up for 45. Oh, sweetness as well. Loads of sweetness. Let's take that to coming up for 55. Right. A minute. Probably minute 3 by the time I'd finished there, but I don't think you'll hold that against me. Hopefully not. It's got freshness. Got freshness, a greenery quality to it, loads of sweetness. Okay, we're cooking with gas, as they say. Colour-wise, bit more yellow, but still white tea kind of colour. Just a slightly yellow one. Much the same on the cup. Ooh. There's a lot going on there. Loads going on there. Sweet. Herbal. Really sweet. Floral. Cream or butteriness. Loads of that. That's really good. And it's still, I would say, only about half. Some of the leaves have gone a bit further, but those beads, I would say, pretty much only about 50% unfurled or rehydrated. Let's get a slightly bigger cupful. Oh yeah. That's really complex, really, really, really enjoyable. Flavour isn't dropping off. 95 is the way to go. Western doesn't need it, this definitely does. That's a sweet spot. If a flavour was lasting a bit longer, that would be a sweet spot. Let's try again. Definitely the final one. Whatever happens, it's going to be the last steeping. Still some popping. So it just shows you that some of those beads have barely begun to unfold, if at all, unfurl, depending on how you want to phrase it. We have a bit of a sugar. Let's see where we are. Coming up for 35. Ooh, I think we won't take that past 45. Yeah, we'll just go straight to 45 and call that quits. There's a lot going on there. Really complicated, load of sweetness and greenery and freshness. Yeah, it smells very much like typical, oh, do you know? Some of those are barely, and some of those are really still barely steeped. Number 4, while we review this bit. Right, just let that steep. That's number 4 because I refuse to be beaten. Leave that there. Color-wise, slightly more yellow still. Scent the freshness, oodles of freshness and flowers. And a sweet, the same but with more sweetness. It's so heady with flowers. It's almost perfumey again. Just that kind of sense the volatiles going off into the nose. Wow. Let's do that again. Yeah, it's just great masses of flowers. That's definitely a sweet spot. Right, I have no idea how long this has been steeping for. Much the same, but even more intense. Maybe heavier on the sort of the freshness and the greenery. Yeah, there's no totally unfurled beads or partial beads there. You can see it's starting to take up more room. You could get a couple more steeps out of that easily, but see where we are color-wise. Oh yeah, a bit more yellow. That kind of greenery and a bit of vegetal. Loads of sweetness though. Let's see if we've got flowers or whether we've just got too much vegetal coming through. Sweet, very, very sweet. That was a good idea. Once again, just masses of flowers and candy sweetness and freshness. Yeah, that's stunning. So from 95 all the way, and don't be afraid to push the steeping time. Oh, that's fantastic. Okay. So the spring version, really, really resilient to steeping. I've got the material here, and you can see that's twiggy material, but I don't know if you can see how much that's bouncing back, that leaf. It's not hanging. So 95 all the way for both. This winter has got great gouts of floral quality. Not so much in the cream, at least Gongfu wise. The spring one was very much bringing the butter forward, plus some greenery and a bit of florals. I think this winter one does better with Gongfu, providing you've got hot water, and the spring one probably, I think, did better with the beg your pardon, with the Western or Teapot Brewing. So there we go. Seasonality. It's making this CG Chun put florality forward and sweetness on the winter version. The spring one, it's the butter is coming forward and there is some flowers and there's still plenty of sweetness. So something of that flavor profile is there in both the florals and the butter, but very much in different proportions. So bearing in mind this is video 1 of 2, and let's see how much of that florality, that creaminess, that butteriness comes through when we take a look at CG Chun in 2 other guises. So for this video, I hope this has been informative and interesting. I really enjoyed this tea because it's a compare and contrast. It's not going to get the point score system. I'm just trying to learn something, and hopefully we can learn together. So happy steeping, and God bless.